Should the Sixers trade the number 16th pick in the NBA draft?
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Hello, my name is Keith Pompey, and this is my right-hand man, John Mitchell. We are the co-host of Locked On 76ers. We got a lot to talk to y'all about today. First of all, we got to ask that question. Should the Sixers select the number 16 pick in the NBA draft? The draft is going to be a 2-day draft, the 26-27. The second segment, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the top 16, well, not the top 16, but players who teams found with the number 16 pick over the years. And there's been some pretty good ones. Yeah. Even a Hall of Famer, a dream teamer. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. And then in the third segment, we got to compare how the Sixers drafts compare to the Boston Celtics. When you look at it, the Sixers had some picks, had some better picks. What I mean is better like number one overall and things like that, better selections. But Boston, while the Sixers didn't get it all right, the Boston Celtics made the right pick, right? So we'll talk about that.
It's the weekend, man. You're going to ruin people's weekend bringing up that horrible history.
It ain't my fault. Did I do that? So you gotta blame them other two. You gotta blame a bunch of them. There was a lot of history. You gotta blame a bunch of them. So the only person who's not getting blamed is Sam Hinkie, because everybody, every time I go somewhere, they're like, yo, they messed up with Sam Hinkie. He did. They messed it up. Sam Hinkie laid the groundwork and they couldn't get it done. They couldn't do it. So it's just crazy. It's crazy. So maybe he left it right at the right time. So he has to do this. Oh, but before I gotta give my condolences to the Gooden family. Drew Gooden, he played for the Sixers in the 2014-15 season. He played in a total of 9 games. I'm telling y'all, what a delight. Great guy. Wow, it kind of hit me when I heard that he passed. Right, really did. I mean, to a point, Mitch, and I know we got to get into this, but to a point where last year, the Sixers, not this season, but the season before, the Sixers were playing in Denver. Mm-hmm. And after the game, the guy seeked me out. Him, and his wife. Telling you about great people, down to earth. I mean, you wouldn't, it's so rest in peace, brother.
Yeah,
and I was praying for y'all.
Yeah, I didn't know him, but I saw Spears make a post about him, and and usually when you cover people like that, people who cover.
Oh, he was a great dude. Great dude. Yeah, but look, y'all, man. We talk about this number 16 pick, Mitch. I think that there may be there's one guy who I really like. I like Trenton Flowers. He's starting to grow on me. He's a 6'7", 6'8" kid. And we'll talk more about him in the second segment a little bit. But young guy, I think he could be a steal. But for what the Sixers really need to do, I don't think that anyone in this draft, not even the guy who's probably going to be taken first overall, is going to be able to help the Sixers get where they want to get. Maybe it'll be someone that's going to help them down the road. Now, of course, there's always steals in the draft, like late first round, there's always a kid that you hear about, this and that. But to me personally, like, I honestly think that the 76ers will be better suited trading that pick, especially to a team that's like rebuilding, who basically wants to get rid of some salary and hey, like, say, get this veteran starter off our hands, and we can take this draft pick. Like, you know what I mean? Because I honestly feel like that's the best route for the Sixers to go moving forward, because their window is now. They got to get people now. So to me, I mean, I get it, but this is a weak draft, dude.
Yeah.
Like, this is a weak one. You got the Atlanta Hawks with the first overall pick talking about, I'm trying to trade it. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, if you're really trying to win and you're saying like, let's go all in, let's do this, let's do that, I think you got to move the pick.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. It is a very weak draft. The one caveat for me is still the whole Bronny James thing. With it being a weak draft, I'm still of the opinion, and of course, this was something that just has come up. You never really heard LeBron speak to it. You've heard other people speak to it. And yes, he would like to play with his son. He's a billionaire. He's accomplished everything. But I think LeBron still would love to win another championship. He's obviously one of the greatest competitors we've ever seen. 21 seasons, and I do think that if you have to get that off the table, if you know that drafting LeBron, who's definitely not worthy of the pick, let's get that out there. He's not worthy. Bronny is not worthy of that pick from a talent standpoint. I think he measured out at under 6'2", so
6'1" 3/4. Yep.
Yeah, so the measurables aren't there. He's very athletic. Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, but he's just not ready, and he doesn't appear to be a good player. So if you get that off the table, that pick, that they're drafting him, and I'm all for that. If that would bring LeBron here, then I'm on that train. I'm completely on that train. But if it's not, it's time you package that. And of course, years down the road, when somebody from this draft exceeds expectations, as they often do, as they always do, somebody comes out as a gem in a draft that nobody had a clue that person would become that, gem in the league. But it's they are in win now mode. As I said, Joel Embiid is ultra, man. That beat starts going off on his chest midway through the season, and it's like, I don't know how much I have left with him. What will I have get out of him in May and June? So they're in win now move, and if you have to move the picks, I keep hearing people say they don't have tradable assets. Well, that all depends on how somebody else views future first round picks. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So if they if you don't believe that the player is there that can help you, or the play, and I read the excellent piece you wrote this morning, identifying some of the players. Collier, I think you think he won't be available there, and he fits that mold of the kid who's right out of high school, 5-star athlete, sort of like the kid from Imhotep, but just had a mediocre season in Kentucky. So so if you're not, it's the 16th pick in the draft. It becomes, as the talent becomes thin, you can't just say, well, the Sixers didn't know what they're doing when they made a selection. It's just the talent. It's questionable. You're not finding a Tyrese Maxey at where they found him is an outlier in the draft.
Yeah, it's actually kind of luck. Like, I mean, Maxey slid to them, dude. Like, I mean, like, ooh, man, can you imagine how high he would go now with a redraft?
Oh, yeah. I don't know who else was in that draft.
Oh, Ant-Man was in there. Quigley was in there. Yeah, Ant-Man was like number 1 overall. But the crazy part is, this is the funny thing, but that was also the COVID year. Remember, like, it was the COVID thing and they didn't have it. And I know we're getting off subject, but I remember people were telling me who, because they were all the guys used to go to California and they work out and
Right.
all that. And people, and it's easy to say now, but people were telling me that Maxey was like looking really, really good. And everybody was before like they even knew he was gonna be a Sixer, they were like, yo, this guy, man, like Ant-Man is the truth. We all know that. But this dude is just as good. Like he's out there doing stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
they were like, and then when the Sixers got him, they were like, man, I can't believe they got him. I
Yeah.
can't believe they got him. What's wrong with the league? Things
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
it is what it is, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that more. Talk about that more in the next segment. We can also talk about some of the players who have been selected down through history. Some of it recent, some of it some folks would call ancient history. But there have been quality players found at the 16th pick. But right now, as we refer back to our sponsor, Prize Pick, I want to tell you a little bit about what Prize Pick is. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. And I would advise you to get in on the playoff action because whatever you think about Boston and Dallas, I think that's going to be a decent series. So you get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the finals. I've done that. I've done some. When we were matching up players with Prize Picks, I participated. At one point I had Stephen Curry for 29 points and Nikola Jokic for more than 10 rebounds, and I hit on that. So I've experience on what I'm speaking about. So I would advise you to download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume sometimes with all that shouting. Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming, hooping, and hollering. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single solitary day.
Do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
Do,
So,
do,
Mitch,
do,
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 do, do.
yeah.
so, so when we talk about the 16th pick, man, it's kind of like, it's not a lottery pick. It's middle of the road pick, so to speak. Um,
Mhm.
you look at it and you say to yourself, like, well, who are some of the options, or what's the benefits of the Sixers getting it now? Like they could end up getting a diamond in the rough,
Yeah.
right? At that pick, right? So
Mhm.
so you just never know. But the one thing is when we were talking off camera, I mean, you let it be known. Now the crazy part about that is you know, it's weird. Like you were letting it known that like a Hall of Famer
Yeah.
was selected at that
Yeah.
pick.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the draft is not a throwaway event, particularly if you had the #1 pick last year, because you got a truly San Antonio walked away with a truly generational and revolutionary player at the #1 spot. But at 16, there are some gems. And, just looking at some of the people who've gone in that position, I mean, most recently during COVID in 21, uh, Alperen Sengun in Houston. And I think it's pronounced Shengun. With all these international players who have different pronunciations of their name, sometimes I get hung up on them. But I mean, he's been very good for the Rockets. And some people thought he was an all-star this year, should have been an all-star, but he's clearly a scorer, a rebounder. He's clearly on the verge of becoming an all-star. More recently, Terry Rozier, Celtcis in 2015. Rozier's had some very productive seasons in Charlotte. That season he was in Toronto, and I'm sure that Miami likes having him on that roster now. 2000, when Chris Webber and those guys were making those runs to the Western Conference Finals and couldn't get past Shaq and Kobe. In 2000, with the 16th pick, they selected Hedo Turkoglu, and Turkoglu was a good player, man. Nice swingman, utility guy. Eventually worked his way into the starting lineup and was a really good player. And now you can't have this list without mentioning Nikola Vucevic, 2011. You know who drafted him? 76ers. And he's going to make a couple of all-star games, and I was covering them during their rookie season. And I used to wonder at times why Temple's very own Lavoy Allen was stealing minutes away from him. Where's Lavoy Allen? Where's our man Lavoy Allen right now? I hope he's doing well. And then 1999, Meta World Peace, at that time known as Ron Artest. He's known for much more. He's known for the Malice at the Palace and his role in that, but he was at one point he was the best defensive player, on-ball defender in that league for a long time, and was considered, as crazy as he was, a good teammate. And of course, you mentioned it earlier, man. Proof that pick is not trash. The 84 draft is known for Michael Jordan, Elijah Wan, Chuck-a-Luck, Charles Barkley, just a slew of Hall of Famers. But there was a Hall of Famer taken at the 16th pick that year by the name of John Stockton. He ran the screen and roll better than anybody. He was a terrific, always was at the top of the league in assists and steals. Nobody thought that Stockton, when he was selected by Utah with the 16th pick in the 84 draft, he was just a name. Now he's, like you said, he's a dream teamer, Hall of Famer, top 100 player in league history. So you have that. So I know you want to trade the 16th pick, but you can't discount it as a pick. That's just, this again, we keep mentioning in today's NBA, this is what Daryl Morey has to earn his loot. This is where he has to prove he has an extension. So if in fact they do keep that pick, that might be your guy.
Yeah. Now I'm just adding this.
You might find somebody there. You can't just rule it out.
Yeah, I'm just going to add someone else who else went with the 16th pick. Zaire Smith, the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
And the Sixers traded. And the Sixers traded Mikal Bridges.
Oh, why you want to poop on the party, bro?
I'm just saying, that's real. I remember that. That was like the 16th pick.
You were there.
Yeah, I was like, wow. But you know what, man? As much as we want to credit, that was one of those. First of all, I think it was a bad move. But at the same time, you kind of felt bad for Zaire. It's kind of like he didn't ask to be of course he didn't it was. The reason why I'm saying I felt bad for him was because he was criticized, and he from day one during his opening day press conference, not opening day, but from his the press conference he had the day after he was drafted, in front of him, the questions were, why you draft him? Why you trade Mikal Bridges?
Yeah.
It was as if the dude wasn't even in the room, right? And then when he had the peanut allergy, it was done. It was just done. Dude, it was so crazy. He didn't even make the travel team for the bubble. They left him at home. Mm-hmm. He didn't even go in the bubble with the Sixers because you could only take X amount of people. He didn't even go in the bubble, dude.
Yeah, and you know it's interesting, man. I feel for him. I mean, because anybody that's the greatest day of your career, and you would like to see anybody have success in that situation. Let's be perfectly frank about that. But I remember. Do you remember who Brett Brown compared him to?
Kawhi, bro.
Why?
Yeah, he was stretching. He was
Yeah.
reaching.
And
Yeah, at that point we were like,
and when I heard that, I was like, "Oh, come on, Brett! You know, it's like don't put that on the 16th pick in the draft." And a guy who's really not wanted here. I mean, because Philadelphia was happy, very happy. The fan base was completely happy bringing a homeboy back home, and they just took a dump on that, man.
yeah, that was your people's. That was your people's. That was your people's. And let me stop. Only playing. But look, y'all. When we get right back, we'll talk about comparing. We'll basically compare the Sixers draft picks to the Boston Celtics over the years.
Mhm.
And it's something that you really can't go deep. You don't have to go deep into because we all know what happened.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
oh man, they used to play him. They used to play him. We'll be right back. So Mitch, look, here's the deal, dude. The Boston Celtics. It was one of those things where whenever Danny Ainge picked up the phone, you knew you were in trouble, right? Because he was just getting over on people,
Yeah,
dude. Like
yeah.
it was crazy. Like so, we talked about yesterday. We talked about. So I don't want to rehab it, but like just so y'all know, when the process started, the Sixers and the Boston Celtics, um, after that 2013-14 season at over, they were among the two worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
The Sixers were acquiring assets. The Celtics had assets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from when they made the Brooklyn Nets, when they made the trade with when they traded the big ticket and Paul Pierce,
Yeah.
um, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Brooklyn Nets. They were the Brooklyn Nets because they weren't New Jersey anymore. They were Brooklyn. Well,
I still call them the
yeah,
New Jersey
yeah,
Nets.
yeah, yeah. So but it was so they had a lot of assets, and the Sixers were acquiring assets and getting it.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden, you look at the first graph, and like it was like, yo, who was Boston drafting?
Yeah.
Like they got Kelly Olynyk, and they got
Yeah.
I think they got Phil Pressey, guys like that. Where the Sixers got Nerlens Noel, they had all this other stuff, right? So everything seemed great. They got Michael Carter Williams, who got Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seemed great, and the next thing you know, you start seeing how um, Danny Ainge was acquiring more assets. If a person didn't work out, he trade them when their stock was high, this and that. So then we go to the Ben Simmons trade. We go to, Ben Simmons draft, Mikel Folks draft. They had the third pick. The Sixers had the first pick. Like no one knew who. You knew who Jaylen Brown was, but the knock was he couldn't shoot. Right?
Yeah.
He was just an athlete. Jason Tatum was like, oh, he's good, but we have Ben Simmons. But then you go right that thing.
We had a guy who was getting ready to quit on us.
Man, it was crazy. But look,
Getting ready to quit.
here's the kicker though. The Sixers promised. They found out that the Sixers promised Matisse Thybulle that they were going to draft him. So what did they do? They draft Matisse because there was two. So they take in draft like it was the guy, the Cam. What's his name? Cam. Who's with the Brooklyn Nets now? It was two guys at the Sixers.
Cam Johnson, is it?
They like Cam Johnson and they liked Matisse. And they, right. So Cam Johnson goes early to Phoenix. It was like a reach. Mm-hmm. And then Matisse was there. So what they do, they drafted Matisse and said to the Sixers, you can have him, but you got to give us stuff. So they gave up more assets. It was like, but then you look at it, they just made all the right moves. And the Sixers didn't, man. And you look at it, think about it. Two guys, Ben Simmons, Folks, didn't pan out for the Sixers. The Sixers still haven't got a second round. Brown and Tatum panned out for them. And the crazy part is, it's not like Brown and Tatum in the beginning played well together.
Right.
they developed into that. But it's also the the role players you got. Look at the great trades they were able to make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was I don't know, dude, it's bad. I mean, that's a difference of two organizations. Like one organization that was making championship moves, the other organization was worrying about Burnagate.
Yeah.
All that other stuff crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All kinds of ancillary stupidity. Um, and you know, it's really interesting what the Celtics did, and I thought it was crucial when they recognized that the team was tuning Brad Stevens out. They still recognized that there was a place for Brad Stevens and moved him to general manager. Because remember how he was just the people were saying that he's better than Pop, and I was like, come on, man, can we pump the brakes a little bit?
Yeah.
Um, but they didn't. They didn't discard, and they moved him. You know, made him a general manager, got him out of the picture. But you know, when you look at the Sixers have made moves that in professional sports that you have to consider terminal. You know, you can't make mistakes with the number one pick in the draft in back-to-back years. You know, and if you just compare their two number one picks, obviously Ben Simmons quit on him and he's kitty catting his way out of the league. Um, and you look at Markel Fultz, who and I'll be honest, I thought those were good picks at the time, but I'm not talking to these guys. I'm not I'm not having NBA security look into their background. I'm not doing background checks on it. I'm not doing all these in-depth things that you have to do to find out about the mental makeup of these players, whether they're going to be kitty cat or whether they're going to be strong. And when you look at what Boston's done, Boston's maxed out there to the players you just talked about, uh, the Jaylen Brown, and the kid from Duke, Jason Tatum. So those are bedrock players for 10 years. So they fortified themselves for a decade by making the right decisions.
But
Uh,
also, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no, go
off.
ahead,
I
Keith.
apologize. A lot of it got to do with culture too.
It is
Because when
culture.
you look at the Boston Celtics, there's nobody bigger than the Celtics. No one bigger than the Celtics,
Yeah,
right? And Danny Ainge knew that. Brad Stevens knows that now. Um, it's just the history, the tradition.
hmm,
The 76ers, it just seemed like it was just a loose cannon, man. They letting stuff go on. I mean, think of how all the different general managers / presidents of basketball ops they had during my tenure. I mean,
yeah,
you have Sam Hinkie. You have from Sam Hinkie, then Jerry Colangelo comes in, right? Then
yeah.
all of a sudden, he hires his son, Brian Colangelo. And then from there, and I thought Jerry Colangelo was great. I like Jerry Colangelo. I mean,
He had a great reputation until he got here.
well, it's. I mean, I think it was just. I think that at that point, stuff was so whacked out
Yeah,
that things were crazy and people could. Then he leaves, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Okay, well, we're going to get Brett Brown, who's going to be the interim,
yeah,
right?" Then you go Elton Brand, and then all of a sudden it's like Daryl Morey. But the one thing that they kept saying is, we got a collaborative effort, a
right,
collaborative effort. Dude, you don't. A collaborative effort is never going to
right,
win you anything. You need a guy.
yeah,
What a collaborative effort means is the owner is the one calling the shots because they can
right,
make it no matter who. Like you can talk about Burnergate, you can talk about this, you can talk about that. Dude, they were making they were making picks for the same type of players,
yeah,
and they were making the same mistakes.
yeah.
So, and they still are to a point. So it's like kind of like, man, like, whereas it's funny, like, and you can say they made some pretty good picks, like second round picks, undrafted guys who they gave money to. But what happened?
Yeah.
They let them go or traded them.
Yeah,
So it was just crazy.
they just haven't had consistently elite performance from their front office. There've been too many hiccups. There've been some bright moments. There've been some bright moments. Let's um, But I also remember, the year they drafted Embiid, who was the apple of their eye was Wiggins. And I mean, and they were fortunate that Embiid had all those question marks going into him. But I do believe if they had the number one pick that year, they were taking Wiggins.
And not only that, this is one thing a lot of people, and they, of course they're going to deny it, but it's true because people who really, 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 really close to the situation told me, dude, they were thinking about trading out the third pick and drafting Marcus Smart. Like, you know what I mean? They didn't have I'm telling you, it's like he had to be talked out of that. That's he ended up with. See what I mean? He had to be talked out of it. So like people like want to make it seem like everything was, they found, nah, man. Because I'm telling you, beforehand, I remember I wrote an article and they even said it. They were like, man, like a couple people on the team was like, man, I don't know why we're going after another center.
Right.
Like, we just got Nerlens. We don't even know if he could play, right? So why are we gonna go after another one?
And it turns out he couldn't.
But I think Nerlens was good. The problem with Nerlens was you don't give a young kid like that all that power.
Yeah.
That was the problem, man. You had him thinking he was the man. He was the man. That was the problem. It was nobody that was reprimanding them. Dude, let me tell you, it was different to me. Like normally when you covered teams, it was like you had the veterans, like the Karan Butlers and all them who were the veterans or the stars and all that. Like they the ones that had the special privilege. Not on those early teams. They were treating the young dudes like they were the stars. And when you do that from day one, holding up planes because of these guys are late, but leaving the veterans, it's like, nah, you can't win.
And that was the mistake of Sam Hinkie. I thought he was totally infatuated with what potentially could be. And like they say, man, potential gets people fired, and hence, therefore he was right.
You drafted 3 centers in a row, and luckily that one of them came out to be an MVP. You drafted 3 centers in a row. One dude is an energy guy, turned out to be an energy guy. The
one
other dude,
throwback to the 1980s.
The other dude is doing pretty well overseas, but his game just didn't translate to the modern NBA. And then the third one was great, but
Jaleel is still playing overseas. He's playing overseas.
He's playing overseas, yeah. He's playing overseas. You know what I mean? He's playing overseas. But it was a lot of dudes that they could have had, man, and they just missed it. But look, y'all, we don't want to ramble and do all that other stuff. Y'all probably like, yo, if y'all don't shut up, we got stuff to do. It's Friday. Right. We're going to the shore. We're doing this. We're doing that. But I just want to, before we end, I want to let y'all know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And like I always say, do it today.
Do it today.
Definitely do it today. But look, like I said, have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday, talk more about the Sixers. And my man Mitch is going to talk about somebody having the kitty cat and some all this other crazy stuff. But no, it's all good.
G-rated show, man.
Yeah, G-rated. All right, y'all. For Mitch and me, peace.
Peace. Have a great weekend. Be safe. God bless.